Donald Trump said that we were going to this war for, well, actually a lot of different things. And I'm gonna show you a graphic in a second of all the different things that he said we were doing the war for, including getting rid of Iran's nukes and regime change, etc. But now, stories coming out, Wall Street Journal, Daily Beast, many other outlets showing, no, in fact, none of those things are true at all, and they're not backed up by the intelligence. So let me quote the Wall Street Journal here to begin with. US officials and lawmakers with access to classified information, along with experts who have spent their careers poring over public data and government reports, say the administration's assertions are incomplete, unsubstantiated, or flat out wrong. So first, let me show you the different reasons that the administration has given. And maybe Glenn could add to some of them. So before the war began, they said this was to destroy Iran's ballistic missiles, their nuclear program, ending their relationship with proxy groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, and regime change. Okay, now we're gonna break down each one of these and show you what's wrong with every one of them. Since the war has begun, they've actually added 3, destroying Iran's IEDs, their roadside bombs, at a usually impossible Israeli standard. How would we know if they're all gone? Destroying Iran's entire navy, that's now been added to the mix, and ending Iran's quote unquote 47-year war against the US. And the way you end a war like that is that you start a new war. Oh, weird. All right, before I get to the rest of the intelligence, Glenn, what's your 2 cents on this one?
I just think it's really a good reminder for people who didn't live through 2002 and 2003, or for people who did and don't remember. This is exactly what this was like. All the same arguments, in most cases, all the same people. The reason there's no clarity about the reason for the war is because this is a senseless war. That's why there was never really a clear reason for Iraq, for Libya, for Syria either. And I think the parallels are so clear.
Yeah, the parallels are striking. We're gonna talk about that in a minute. First, let me give you some more from the Wall Street Journal. They explain some lawmakers and US officials say Iran was nowhere near capable of building a nuclear weapon, even if Tehran seeks one. They also say there's no evidence to support Trump's claim that Iran could rapidly develop a missile capable of striking the US, and the accusation that Iran would preemptively attack US targets in the Middle East rested on either Israel or the US moving to strike Iran first. So if they don't strike first, there's no way Iran could have hit us. And mind you guys, this is the Wall Street Journal owned by Rupert Murdoch. So this is fascinating that they have an excellent article breaking down every lie and misdirection that has led us to this war. Even they're writing about it. So then they explain, no evidence was found that Tehran's effort to field intercontinental missiles able to reach the US was close to fruition, according to a lawmaker familiar with the assessments. Recent US intelligence assessments had concluded that Iran couldn't develop dozens of missiles for at least a decade. Okay, now we go to another theoretical explanation. By Sunday, administration officials had walked back their initial claim that Iran would launch a preemptive attack on its own. So when they said that was just a flat out lie and it was wrong. So Caroline Leavitt came out and clarified, as did Marco Rubio earlier and Tom Cotton as well. She said, quote, the United States understood that Israel was going to strike Iran, and when they did, Iran would attack the United States. So that means, yes, we were pushed into this war by Israel. Thank you for the confession, we appreciate it. They go on to say that officials and analysts note that Iran does have uranium that could be enriched around the 1-week time frame to make it usable for a nuclear weapon. The issue is Iran appears to have no enrichment facility where cascades of centrifuges are assembled to enrich the material to weapons grade. Iran also would have to get access to the stockpile, which would very possibly be tracked. And even if Iran did get weapons grade uranium, it would still have to assemble scientists, produce uranium material, and build it inside a nuclear device, all without being caught doing so. Now, almost all of the claims of the administration has been knocked down. And then of course you have to remember the cost of this war. We'll talk more about the cost a little bit later in the program, but there's of course the very clear cost of lives lost, and already 6 Americans have been lost. By the way, our consulate in Dubai just got hit by the Iranians earlier today, a little bit before the show began, because they continue to attack everywhere where there are American bases. People continue to say, like, I don't know why they're doing that, including Donald Trump saying, I don't know why they're, because we attacked them. So they're hitting us anywhere they can, which is usually our bases and our consulates and our embassies. But Donald Trump acknowledged that there would be American lives lost. He said, quote, we have a virtually, and that the war would last forever, basically. He said, we have a virtually unlimited supply of these weapons. Wars can be fought, quote, forever and very successfully using just these supplies. So, okay, so don't worry, this war will last forever, even though it's based on absolutely nothing. So Glenn, let me bring you back in. Let's discuss the reasons they gave before the war. So regime change, kind of reminds me of Iraq a little bit. False evidence of weapons of mass destruction. In this case, oh my God, they're gonna have a nuke any second. Reminds me of Iraq a little bit. We've got to end their relationship with the proxy groups, Hamas and Hezbollah. Saddam had relationships with Hamas and Hezbollah, and we were told about that. But a new one that they did not have the temerity to mention in the Iraq war lead-up, which is destroying all of their missiles. So let's start there. What's your take on their initial reasons for the war?
I actually think, and especially as you went through all that the lies that are being told, all of them to justify this new war with Iran are even more transparent and brazen and insulting to the public's intelligence than the ones that we heard in 2002 and 2003 with respect to Iraq. Maybe in part it's because we have the insight retrospectively to understand the way in which governments lie to us about these exact issues, because the script and the playbook is almost identical. But I think it's beyond that, Cenk. Like, what's really maddening to me, it's driving me crazy. And I don't know if you listened to Trump's press briefing today when he was sitting next to the German Chancellor, Friedrich Merz, who was basically more or less in support of this war. But Trump was making up just absolute fabrication, saying that Obama did a deal with them that allowed them to get the highest grade nuclear weapons, that had we not attacked back last June, they were about a minute away from getting a nuclear weapon. They would have used it against Israel and other countries and maybe even the US. Wild, wild claims. And what's so frustrating about it is back in June, when the United States did that one-day bombing campaign along with Israel in the middle of Israel's war on Iran, President Trump did what he always does, which is he tries to claim that he was just responsible for the greatest victory in history. Nothing like it has ever been seen. And a lot of reporters were saying, well, how do you know for sure that you've actually totally obliterated their nuclear program? How do you know that we're not going to be back in a few months and hearing that we have to go to war with Iran again to obliterate their nuclear program? And he said, you're lying, this is fake news, you're disrespecting the pilots. And they're still up on the White House website, a very boisterous document that says the United States completely obliterated Iran's nuclear program, and any claims to the contrary are fake news. And now here we are 9 months later with the main argument for why we need this massive regional conflagration that already has escalated and might escalate way further, that we have to go and stop Iran from getting nukes when we were just told 10 months ago that we did exactly that.
Don't forget, Noble Mobile saving you a ton of money. So a lot of people are signing up now and beginning to realize, what the hell, why am I paying so much to Verizon and AT&T? So your bill's only $50 a month, but it can actually be less because they give you money back if you don't use your data. So if you're paying more than $50, there's no reason to not switch. It's crazy not to switch because same phone, same number, same contacts, literally nothing changes. TYT.com/switch, TYT.com/switch. All right, we'll be right back.
And then just quickly on the ballistic missile program, ballistic missiles are conventional weapons. Most advanced militaries in the world have them. This is the ultimate proof that this is a war for Israel, because ballistic missiles cannot reach the United States. Even if they could, Iran is not going to start a direct war with the United States. Even the US government couldn't claim that they were about to attack us, and that's why they had to admit that they would only attack us if Israel attacked them. These ballistic missiles are a threat to only one country, Israel. Even Trump said last June when Israel attacked Iran that the Israelis got hit extremely hard. Buildings were falling in Tel Aviv and elsewhere because of these ballistic missiles. We are at war if it's because of ballistic missiles. That is a war for Israel. Those weapons are a threat only to Israel. They're really a deterrent, is what they are to Israel attacking. Israel attacking Iran knows that they're going to have to pay a cost. So of course Israel wants to get rid of those ballistic missiles so they can attack Iran at will with no price to pay. Why are our soldiers dying for that?
Yeah, literally the only way that their ballistic missiles could hit us is if we start a war with them. So why did we start a war? So we could get hit? That makes no sense at all. The only way it makes sense is if you're doing this war for Israel. That is absolutely right. And Glenn, of the things that drive us crazy, you're right. And the media does this all the time. Collective amnesia overnight, right? all the facilities are destroyed. And never mind, it's for the nukes, and we're barely questioning that. The other thing that drives me crazy about the media. So nowadays in online media, we're all over the place, and they can't contain us, right? But in television, I still see almost no opponents of the war on television. And these are the same guys, Glenn, that told us, lessons learned from the Iraq war. We're never gonna make that mistake again. And just by trumpeting all of the official government officials and politicians and the pro-Israel factions within the media, which is about 98% of the media, here they are doing it again, aren't they?
Yeah, Cenk, I'm sure you remember this, but I do think that the largest part of the corporate media genuinely does hate Trump. I don't think they hate the Republican Party or conservatives. I think they hate Donald Trump for all sorts of reasons, valid or otherwise. But the one time they actually stopped and praised him and refrained from criticizing him in the first term, and even said, this means he's really our president, is when he bombed Syria. There's literally nothing that the corporate media loves more than when the United States goes to war. It's not just because they get higher ratings, which they absolutely do, and that is part of it, and they become more important in our daily lives when there's actually a war that they get to cover and everybody tunes in to find out what's going on. And it's exciting for them, more exciting than covering, say, a budget shutdown or just the standard things that happen in Washington. But war propaganda is designed to trigger our most primal instinct. It's incredibly powerful. It's really a science developed over many decades, really many centuries. We are tribal beings. And these journalists who live in Washington are around the people who are starting the wars, whose sources are all these generals and people inside the US security state and inside the Senate, like Chuck Schumer, not just Republicans, although them too, who favor this war. They're in their ear all the time, and they're more drowning in propaganda in favor of this war than anybody else is. And so that's what they go on camera and transmit. It's like this perfect storm. And you see how quickly that, despite how much they hate Trump and still hate Trump, that gets instantly overwhelmed by the far more compelling imperative that they love new wars. They always have, and probably they always will. And I do think that's one of the main reasons, Cenk, that they have lost the faith and trust of the American people. Certainly COVID and the financial crisis contributed to that, but everybody knows that they lied the country into a war in 2002 and 2003, excluded dissent almost entirely. And they're repeating, again, not just the same media practices now of excluding dissent and keeping war opponents off the air. The script itself is identical, as you know well, and as I know well, and anybody who lived through that period and paid a lot of attention to it or wrote about it or studied it or reported on it knows well as well. It's shocking that they're not even bothering to change it, even like as a pretense, even trivially.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. But don't worry, later Jay Tapper will write a book. No one could have known this was for Israel. Okay, or the same exact
or based on lies. Like, I can't believe it. It was based on lies.
Yeah, exactly. So now I'm gonna, speaking of lies, I'm gonna show you a Marco Rubio clip in a second. But I wanted to first go to the new justifications. We have to destroy their entire navy. My favorite is we didn't start this war. Hegseth said that yesterday, and now almost all of the puppets are saying it. And Netanyahu himself said it to Sean Hannity. No. This war's been going on for 47 years. So my sense of that is because the reason they're bringing that out is because since this is so obviously for Israel, and Rubio and others have admitted that it was for Israel, now they have to put out a new document. No. It is for America. It is for America. Why? Oh, because Iran started the war 47 years ago, and we've been fighting that war, and now Donald Trump's gonna finish it, right? So that's my sense of why they do that. But have you ever heard a goal as absurd as knocking out all their roadside bombs? What is that, let alone their entire navy?
I mean, as you said, they need desperately to find, especially now that Rubio accidentally revealed the truth and that other officials and senators in support of the war did too, because again, even given how much you can lie in American discourse, especially about wars, nobody would have believed had they come out and said, Iran was about to attack us. Like nobody would believe that the Iranian government would just decide to provoke and start a war with the United States. So in lieu of saying that, they kind of got twisted and they said, oh, well, the reason they were going to attack us was because Israel was going to attack them. So we had to go and attack them because of Israel, essentially. We couldn't constrain them. We didn't try to constrain them. This is a war that we had to fight because of what Israel did and what Israel was going to do. And now they're desperate to change that narrative and try and convince, especially their own base, but the country at large, oh no, soldiers aren't dying for Israel. They're actually, this is a government and a country that was threatening the United States. And Cenk, they're going back like to 1979 with the hostage crisis, or in the early 1980s with Hezbollah bombings. And now trying to convince Americans that this is a country that we've been at war at for 47 years, even though Donald Trump was president already for 4 years and never mentioned that we were at war with Iran. He bombed one general, but he certainly didn't treat Iran as though we were a country at war with them. He didn't run on a platform in 2024. Hey, by the way, we're at war with Iran and we're going to now go and bomb them. You would think if we were really at war with Iran for 47 years, this would have been mentioned at some point before about 3 seconds ago when Israel decided it was ready for a new war and Trump jumped on board. I think, Cenk, I really do. You already saw that the polls for Trump have been plummeting. And the reason is that Trump won because of his argument that he was going to improve the material lives of American citizens, in large part, by no longer devoting our resources and draining our resources into foreign wars, especially regime change wars of the exact kind that he's now pursuing. And people believed that, and they were waiting for these material improvements. Instead, the first term of the Trump presidency, other than closing the border, which you can say is a success based on what he promised, we've had bombing Yemen, insane focus on Israel and Gaza, constant focus on Russia and Ukraine, and now a major new war in Iran, concealing the Epstein files. This has nothing to do with the lives of American citizens. And I think Republicans know that they're petrified that this is the kind of war that has destroyed presidencies in the past. And this was a presidency that was already so fragile. So now they're just groping around trying to say, oh, we had to do this war for you Americans, because had we not done so, you would and your families would have been endangered. And I just don't think anybody is gonna believe it.
Yeah, I've seen some people online calling it Operation Epstein's Fury. And the reason why you would constantly change your rationale for the war is because you have a different rationale that you're not willing to share with the American people. That's why, right? So finally, we get to Marco Rubio today. He's in a bit of a panic, and I think he makes a mistake here. Let's watch this.
Let me explain to you guys this in simple English, okay? Iran is run by lunatics, religious fanatic lunatics. They have an ambition to have nuclear weapons. They intend to develop those nuclear weapons behind a program of missiles and drones and terrorism that the world will not be able to touch them for fear of those things. And this is the weakest they've ever been. Now is the time to go after them. The president made the decision to go after them, take away their missiles, take away their navy, take away their drones, take away their ability to make those things so that they can never have a nuclear weapon. That's why the president made this decision. It was the right decision, and the world will be a safer place when these radical clerics no longer have access to these weapons.
So it's interesting because he talked about how like they're a religious cult, and I'm like, well, a lot of the Israeli cabinet is a religious cult that believes that God promised them greater Israel. And that's part of the reason for these wars. They're endangering the Middle East. No, wait, Israel's endangering the Middle East. But he said that at one point in that press conference there, that Iran is at its weakest point now, and that's why it was good to attack. But wait, Glenn, we were told that Iran was so close to attacking and they were at their maximum power and we had to go right away. But now, wait a minute, all of a sudden they're at their weakest? So which one is it?
I mean, I think Marco Rubio has been around Washington for a long time. He's usually pretty calm and like sober and cogent as a speaker. That might have been the most kind of flailing and desperate I've ever seen him be, where he was basically just throwing very emotionally packed adjectives around out of desperation that he doesn't have a coherent argument that wouldn't contradict a million things he said a million times previously. These are lunatics, these are religious fanatics. What has Iran ever done that has demonstrated, for example, the kind of suicidal willingness to just blow their whole country up to kill all of Israel or the United States? They've been incredibly restrained over the last decade as the United States and Israel have repeatedly attacked them, including in the last war and in the times that Israel bombed them before that. They purposely didn't use their most powerful missiles. They did everything to avoid escalation. As you suggested, Cenk, there is a lunatic, highly religious, fanatical country in that region that actually already has nuclear weapons, a huge stockpile of them, and that is Israel. And I think that is the country by far that the world fears most. And then right after that comes the United States, which, has just continues to fight 8, 9, 10 wars a year. And I think it's really worth contrasting it with China, which I am not a big fan of in terms of, say, wanting to live there or their domestic policies. But it is amazing that China has not fought a single war since 1979. That is 47 years when we've been invading and attacking. And what did they have to show for it? Mass, high-speed rail and incredibly sophisticated cities and brand new infrastructure and the leading cutting edge of all kinds of research and science and technology, which is what happens when you pour your resources into your own citizens and into your country and not into these foreign wars for foreign interests.
Yep. So ironically, we could be a little bit better off if we did like Israel and took care of ourselves instead of others. Let alone forget taking care of others. Just stop invading others and attacking others, especially on behalf of foreign governments.